This is the Trillium Running Podcast, brought to you by Athletics Ontario. I'm your host, John Shep, and here we celebrate Ontario running and bring together voices from across the road and trail running world. We are making strides towards a thriving and inclusive running community because running is for you, for all, for life. This is John Shep, back with our 50 Years of Running series. It's a collaboration between Run Ottawa and us at Athletics Ontario and the Trillium Running Podcast. Today, we have physiotherapist Richelle Weeks here to run us through our paces, our physio, and all the stuff we're supposed to be doing when we're not running. So, welcome to our 50 years of running, Richelle Weeks.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I kind of set you up there. Jokingly, we know the importance of physio, not just when things are wrong, but when things are right, because we want to make sure that they stay right. But I mean, I'll toss it over to you. What's your professional story? What's your personal story? What's your attachment to the Tamarack Ottawa Race Weekend?
I'm originally from Labrador, and I went to physio school, and then I went home and worked there for 11 years at the hospital. But my family and I moved to Ottawa in 2018. So that was a little bit intimidating because my hometown had 8,000 people and Ottawa has 1 million.
Just a little bit different.
Yeah. So I started working in private practice, and every now and then I would treat a runner and it would just make my day. I would be so excited to get them running again or help them deal with their issues or get their goals that they had upcoming. And the more runners I saw, the more I ended up treating. It was just kind of this trickle down effect, like somebody would tell someone they saw me and then that person would come in. And then I got involved in the Run Ottawa events and started meeting more and more runners there. So now fast forward 6 years, because I can't believe I've been here 6 years, but I have. And I would say like 90% of my schedule is runners. I treated 320 something runners in the Ottawa area last year. And I just
basically 1/10 of your hometown.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. In Goose Bay, I would get like one a year and I'd be so excited. Yeah. So I've done all kinds of running physio courses, and I'm big into running myself. I'm training for Boston right now, and I did Chicago in the fall of last year. So I've kind of been able to blend my hobby and my career somehow. And it feels like I'm not even working when I'm working, because runners are just so awesome to treat and be with.
Well, you know what? We all love hearing that, because I'm sure we all think the other way, where it's like, man, I'm bothering this person with the same thing. Because I'm about to ask the question that I'm sure you've heard 100 times, 1,000 times, but I would be remiss not to ask it. Top three. So you said you saw over 300 runners last year. What are sort of your top three things that people are coming to you for?
Most of the time they're injured, and it's usually the Achilles, some sort of runner's knee, like IT band or patellofemoral type pain, and then probably shin splints, I would say, are the three most common. Every now and then I will get a runner that has no injury, and they're just like, I signed up for Ottawa Race Weekend because it was $50 and it was because they're 50th. They're really attracting a lot of marathon runners with that great deal they had last summer, and they just don't want to get injured, and they come in and it's all preventative rehab, which is fun, but usually runners are injured and not able to do what they want to do, and then they come in.
Yeah. Hey, I'm one of those. I mean, I've had two of those three, so I'm just, knock on wood, the shin splints don't actually hit. But I did my Achilles a bunch of years ago, and I had the patellofemoral for the past maybe 18 months, and went to my physio, got a bunch of really great exercises. They went and looked at my quads and said, wow, you have really strong quads. And then they looked at my hamstrings. And they said, oh, are we treating your 6-year-old or you? Like, so it was definitely an imbalance. And I, you know what, I will say, I stuck to my physio, and I was able to shake it. And now I'm going to continue on. I've got a build to 100-miler at the end of May. And so hopefully I'm going to be continuing to build and do that. So, I mean, turning it over to Ottawa Race Weekend, we've got 5K, we've got 10K, we've got the half marathon, we've got the full marathon. Over 10 times your hometown. And I don't know why I keep harking on that, but it's amazing to me the number of people that just land in Ottawa for this event. I mean, the amount of individuals, the amount of support, the amount of volunteers, and they land in this event, and it has a very community feel. I mean, irrespective of there being 40,000 plus people that land in Ottawa. So I guess I'll go to the 5K, 10K half. Let's look at our 5K runners. So right now we are sort of in February. We've got February, we got March, we got April. So you got 3 months. And so what are we really looking to do if we're not injured, right? And I mean, rule number one, if you're injured, go find an awesome physio like you. But what do we do if we're not injured and we want to stay that way?
Good question. So with the 5K in particular, I think it depends on where someone's coming from. So if it's someone's first 5 kilometer run ever, and they're going through the run walk program and they're building up slowly towards 5K, I would say just progress things nice and slowly, be patient, take your time, don't compare yourself to others. But then if you get someone who's like big goals, like trying to get under 20 minutes for 5K, or they want to really get in the top 10 in the female or male race, it's building that really good base of running fitness and then sprinkling some nice short, quick speed work on top of it. And all of this, in order to stay to the physio's office, you have to do it all gradually, because most people get injured because they're just doing too much too soon.
Mm-hmm.
So, Christmas is over and you feel like you've got to up your fitness game, and you start building mileage, building up a longer run, adding in speed twice a week. And it's just too much too soon all at the same time. So it's just kind of picking almost like a goal each month.
Yeah.
Like, okay, February, I'm going to build a really good base of easy running mileage. And then March, I'm going to add in one speed session a week. And I'm going to progress that speed really gradually. And then in April, I'm going to add a second one in that's a little different to add some variety. And just not trying to do everything at the same time is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, that's huge. And I mean, I even speak from experience. I talked about the patellofemoral pain. And so I overlaid some strength training in December and January. And so December, I did my first phase of strength training. January, I did my second. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start incorporating strides, because like February was going to be my speed. And then I said, okay, I'm going to up my strength training volume and then enter strides. Well, enter patellar femoral pain, because again, too much too soon, even that little bit. And I mean, strides for all our introductory runners, we're not talking about anything huge. We're talking about sort of maybe 5 minutes at the end of your run, but even still overlaying that in addition to the strength training. So yes, sage wisdom for anyone, runners, especially us who just want to do too much too fast too soon.
Yeah, every runner. If every runner could be really, really patient, we'd eliminate 90% of the injuries. But we all want to get faster and be able to PB, and we want to do it like yesterday. So,
well, and I mean, you talked about one really big thing is the imposter syndrome, and thinking that everybody else is doing everything else, and because that's what social media tells us, and ain't always that true.
yeah, social media paints the perfect picture, but you don't see all the bad, the down and the low moments that people have as well.
The rough drafts, for argument's sake.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
I mean, the book that's published on the shelf is certainly not the first draft. And so why would social media be any different?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's move it on. We've got our 10K runners. Those are the individuals who are going to be running Saturday evening at Ottawa Race Weekend. And I've done the 10K myself after working the expo, I will say. So there's a little bit added value there. But I will say, okay, so for our 10K runners 3 months out, what are we looking for?
Very similar to the 5K, like focusing on building that base first. The intervals might be a little bit longer than the short, quick stuff that you're looking to do for the 5K if you're doing speed work. I think it's important, especially with the 10K, and if it's the route that I did a couple of years ago, it is not the flattest course. So trying to work in a little bit of hills into your longer runs that you're doing for the 10K, maybe doing a little bit of hill repeats even, just to really get your quads, your glutes, and your calves ready. So the other thing is with the strength training, and this would be both for the 5 and the 10K, I think a lot of people start to do strength around now, or as they build up their mileage, they're doing strength. If you can rewind and go back to like November, that's the perfect time to start your strength, because you build up a really good base of solid off-season strength when your volume is a little bit lower. And then this time of year, when your volume starts to creep up, the strength is already there. And then once the volume is to the point that you're really having a hard time getting those 2 strength days in per week, then you can pull back to 1 per week, say in April, so that you still maintain the strength you worked so hard to build all winter long, but then you don't lose it because you're still doing it once a week. So trying to periodize both the speed and then the strength is important for both.
Okay. And I'm asking for a friend. I'm not asking for free advice. But if someone were to, for example, have started strength training in December and did a round in December and a round in January and was doing about a 5 to 6 rep range for 5 sets, would you then advocate for, in sort of closer up to the event, to upping the reps, reducing the sets, and sort of reducing the overall volume, but still keeping those sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could do a nice transition, whereas the volume comes up, say in March, maybe one session is still low reps, nice and heavy. And then the other session starts to creep more towards 3x8, 3x10. So then the weight, the resistance comes down a little bit. And that heavy session would be planned really appropriately. So you wouldn't do it the day before your long run, or you wouldn't do it within 24 hours before a speed session.
Mhm.
So if you do speed, say Thursday night, you wouldn't want to be doing any sort of heavy strength Wednesday night or during the day on the Thursday before the speed, because then you're running on really tired, flat legs. So you could periodize it that way. And then as you get closer to race weekend, you could start doing both of the strength days with a little bit more higher reps, lower resistance. And then everybody's different, but around 6 weeks-ish out, a lot of runners prefer to switch to once a week, because then you're in that maintenance mode, but you're not feeling like you can't keep up because you've got 2 strength a week and you're running 5 days a week and you have a long run and 2 speed. I think often when runners get overwhelmed, the first thing that they drop is the strength. But I usually tell people you can just do less strength. You can do once a week
Yeah.
instead of 2 or 3, and you can do a 20-minute session instead of a 45. And by not dropping it completely, you'll still keep a lot of the strength gains you had.
Yeah, two of the biggest shifts for me, one was sort of this past year where doing my strength on my easier or sorry, on my harder run days, but doing it afterwards. And so doing, whether it's a morning run and then a midday or an afternoon weights, or even if it's the run and then weights right after, to your point, doesn't have to be a heck of a lot, sort of 20 minutes. And I found that that was the big shift, because I was mentally, I was like, well, I can't do weights after I do a hard session, but that's actually the perfect time to do it,
Yeah.
because you're then not going to trash your next session. So that was one. And then the other one, and I mean, we slashed on social media, but for me, my phone was the thing that saved me with my strength sessions, and my physio is because I've got them on my task list. And so I know the A type that I am, and possibly some other runners out there. I'm not saying everybody is, but having it on my task list and being like, okay, I'm checking off the fact that I'm stretching my calves, I'm flossing my leg, I'm doing my squats and my deadlifts, and like having that on my task list those were my 2 game changers.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Definitely. You have to plan it in, and you have to not think of it as like, oh, should I do my strengths today? You're doing it. You
Yep.
don't question if you're going to get your run in. So don't question the strength, especially if you've had an injury or if you're over the age of 35, because we do start to lose a little bit of muscle mass as we get older. So it becomes even more important for people towards the 30s, 40s and beyond to be doing their strength. And it is good to keep the hard days hard and the easy days easy. Some people come in and they're doing 2 strength, 2 speed sessions, and a long run all on separate days. So now they have 5 hard days with 2 light days, and they're wondering why they're injured and feeling burnt out. But sometimes we don't really do much with their schedule other than we put the strength and the speed on the same day, doing the speed first. And then they have 3 hard days and 4 easy days. And it makes a huge difference. They can actually recover between sessions then.
Absolutely. Now, half marathon, it's sort of a real big jump in distance from the 10K to the half marathon. And I mean, you're doubling. And so you've got a whole different, I mean, the half marathon is where you start having to think about really dialing in your nutrition, really dialing in your hydration. What are some of the things we'd really have to dial in physio wise for being able to be successful in a May half marathon?
I think the big thing is it's the end of January now. It's way more important than the 10 and the 5 to build that base. So I get people coming in and they're saying they're going to do the half, but they haven't been running much lately. And to me, it's like, it's 17 weeks away. This is, there's 16 and a half. It's coming up. We need to start building sooner rather than later. So it's building that base first. And ideally, I think sometimes people try to do the half off very little weekly mileage, and then they end up not feeling very good. So they're doing 30-kilometer a week runs in their peak. And they end up feeling much better if they get
Made that mistake too.
Yeah. Lots of advice around just having that like consistency in that base. Because if you try to do the half and you've reached 30 kilometers a week, I mean, if you have a busy family and you have kids and a full-time job and all these other activities, maybe 30K a week is all you can do, and you just make the best with that. But ideally you would do more, and you would build up a nice foundation up to 40 or even 50K a week, sometimes more. Like some of my best half marathons I've done with 70 to 80K weeks, and I've just felt that fitness is there. Not everybody has time to do that, depending on your life, family life, work life, that sort of thing. But I think the earlier you start to build, the better. So if someone enters into February 1st and they're at 40K a week, they can build up to 50, maybe even 55 safely. But if you start February and you're running twice a week 5K, you can't safely build that up to anything substantial for race day. So I think now's the time to really focus. And I think it creeps up really quickly because the snow melts usually sometime in early April.
Fingers crossed.
Sometimes it depends. And then it's like, oh, I better start training for my half. It's like, well, it's 8 weeks away, and most good half marathon plans are 16 weeks. So you have to run in the winter.
Yeah, and there's a couple of sort of like hiccups in there, right? Because if you've got young kids, you've got March break, and then you've got the Easter long weekend. And so there's some weekends that can sometimes go a little bit awry, whether it's packed with family stuff or traveling or things like that. So yeah, having that early piece to that is huge. So we got our final big one. We've got our Tartan International Ottawa Marathon, the big one. Any advice for somebody who's staring down? Let's maybe divide these into two. So the experienced marathoner and the first-time marathoner. Let's start with the first-timer. Any advice for the person who's stepping up to their first marathon at this amazing event?
I think two things that I would say to do with the training program itself is make sure that you're not running more than 3.5 hours for your longest run in the build. I've had a lot of people come in and they're like, I want to do 36K before race day 2 weeks out, but they're doing 7-minute per kilometer long runs. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're going to be out there for hours. And if it's 2 to 3 weeks out from race day, we don't really encourage people to run for more than 3.5 hours because it takes so long to recover from that. It's fine to do it on race day because you can recover all you want once the race is done. But when you're doing that within the last month of your build, you're ramping up your injury risk. When you should be peaking and feeling the best, you feel awful because you're recovering from this like 4-hour run you just did. So what I usually recommend, if someone's running at a little bit of a slower pace, again, which is fine, but they're only going to get 26K done or 25K done. If I tell them they can't run more than 3.5 hours, they can take the back-to-back long run approach. So maybe they do 26 on the Saturday, but then they turn around and do like 10 to 15 on the Sunday. So they're running on tired legs, and the ability to get protein and carbs in their body after the run on Saturday and have it 8 to 9 hours sleep that night. And then Sunday, wake up feeling fresh and go again. It diminishes the need for recovery, and it diminishes that injury risk. So I think that's one thing. And then the other would be, see if you can plan your week so that you're not doing most of your weekly mileage in that long run. So I see people where they're like, well, I do like a 5 to 10K runs and then a 25 to 30K run on the weekends. So we call them weekend warriors, where they don't have time to run during the week, but it really sets you up for injury. And it really makes that long run a struggle because you're not running enough during the week to support it. So I think trying to balance your run out throughout the week when you can, and then keeping the long run length realistic would be my two biggest tips. And just getting out there. Like, you can't sign up for a May race and not be okay running in the winter unless you have a good treadmill. So you have to get out there and put that volume in now, because May is going to come here. It's going to be here in no time.
Yes. Well, okay. So, and somebody who's sort of gone to the dance before, they've lined up at the start line before, maybe they're taking a little bit of, maybe they're not considering their fitness as much as they should because they're an experienced runner. Maybe I'm just guessing, but what are your thoughts about somebody who's lining up for, maybe it's the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the 10th time at a marathon?
I think when I have the most experienced runners in and they've done quite a few of them, I like just going through their previous training plans and seeing where we can improve things.
Hmm.
So some people just do the same plan and they do the same thing every year and they're like, why am I not getting any better? And it's like, well, can you add in more volume? Can you do more marathon specific speed work? Like if they're doing a bunch of 400 repeats, can they get into the mile repeats where they really work on that speed endurance? And if someone's really experienced, can they do some long runs with some tempo work in it where you do marathon pace in your long run? So there's all these little things like you think, okay, I've done marathons. I'm just going to do the same thing I did last year. But if you're looking to improve, this is where a coach can help, or just doing some Googling and getting some good running books that are out there. But you just pick a couple things you can do to improve, but try not to change everything, because again, that's when people get
Not
injured.
too
They're
much,
like,
too soon. Yeah.
yeah,
Otherwise,
exactly.
you're not walking into your physio. You're kind of wobbling and hobbling.
Yeah. Pick a couple simple things and then go from there, I would say.
Well, and that's really interesting advice because I probably, I mean, I'm raising my hand again, right? I probably have been in that same boat where it's like, okay, this was my training plan last year and I just want to have like enjoy it. And then I try to tweak whether it's okay, I'm going to try to find a better sleep or a better nutrition or a better hydration. But yeah, whether it's, I mean, okay, so my Saturday long run is, let's say 20K, and I'm going to do the first 5K at this pace, the next 10K at this pace, and then sort of the progression long run. And yeah, that's a huge tool that can be used to people's advantage, and that we don't necessarily always go to. We're just like, okay, I'm going out for my long run and I'm gonna putt along and listen to my podcast, my awesome Trillium Running Podcast, by the way, or your podcast as well. And we just kind of, and then we finish, and that's sort of it. But we can use that as a strategic training.
Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't, you don't have to work harder. It can just be you're used to sleeping 6 hours a night. So this marathon build, you're going to try to aim for 7 or 8, or you're not used to really prioritizing post long run nutrition and protein, and you're going to do that this year. Like that can be minutes on the clock for your final race, or
Mhm.
even if you don't care about your time, just how you feel at the end, it can make all the difference.
Okay, so I'm gonna flip the script a little bit. You said you're training for Boston. So, based on all of this learning that we've uncovered today, and hopefully it is helpful for anyone who's toeing the start line at Ottawa. But for you, what might be something you're doing in this build that may be different, maybe a new learning, maybe you're trying something new? What's something that you're doing for your build to Boston?
Good question. I think probably the biggest thing I changed this go around, when I did Chicago, I was really obsessed with my weekly mileage. I had it in my head that I really wanted to hit 100-kilometer weeks. And I had hit 90 in the spring, so I felt like it wasn't that big of a jump. But then I started forcing it when I probably shouldn't have, and trying to squeeze it out in the last couple of weeks. And then I didn't end up having a really great race in Chicago. So I'm trying to not be as obsessive with the weekly mileage, but just do a lot more quality running and strength sessions. So I'm going to build up towards 80K instead of trying to target 100. But because the course is so hilly, I'm going to really focus on maximizing my strength. And so far it feels good. Like I'm already feeling a little bit better than I did at this point in my Chicago buildup. So we'll see.
That's awesome. Well, we'll be rooting for you. Thank you for running us through some tips and tricks for Ottawa. For anyone who's interested in your work, or if they're in the area, where can they find you?
The easiest way is probably to go, if you want to go to my website, it's Ottawa Running Physio. Or if you want to find me on social media, I'm running with Richelle either on Instagram or Facebook. And I try to post lots of tips there to try to help keep runners out of my office. Because if we get more advice out there on strength training and doing the build correctly, I think less runners will get injured, hopefully.
Yeah, well, you want more walkers and less hobblers, right? Still coming into your office, but just for the better reasons. And I will attest, sort of stalked your Facebook, and I kept scrolling and scrolling. It's like, yep, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's good. So yes, wealth of knowledge. Thank you, Richelle, for joining us today on our 50 Years of Running series, and all the best in your build to Boston, and good luck to anyone competing in Ottawa.
Yeah, thank you, and good luck, everyone.
Thank you to Tamarack Homes and Athletics Ontario for helping us bring this video and podcast series to you. Join Tamarack Homes in celebrating the 50th anniversary of Ottawa Race Weekend. Register now at runottawa.ca. And don't forget to visit athleticsontario.ca or check out the show notes to become a Road and Trail member and discover all of Athletics Ontario's amazing benefits, including discount codes to some of your favorite or soon-to-be favorite Ontario races.